Welcome to The Route to Success, where you hear real stories from leaders doing the hard work of building, leading, and sustaining impact. Today's episode focuses on leadership under pressure, not in theory, in real time. Our guest, Bree Cargiglio. Did I say that correctly? Bree Cargiglio? Okay,
Carriglio.
Carriglio. Oh no, Bree Carriglio. Nothing like starting off on the wrong foot with a guest. Okay. Leads a nonprofit with more than 200 staff serving vulnerable communities across Armenia. Her path was not linear. She spent 15 years in corporate marketing before making a deliberate shift into mission driven work, searching for purpose and clarity in her career. Now she leads through one of the most complex humanitarian challenges in recent years, supporting more than 100,000 refugees displaced by conflict, helping families stabilize, rebuild, and move forward. And Brie also was sharing some really interesting research that I've learned more about. So this is going to be a great conversation. So this conversation is what leadership really looks like when the stakes are high, the work is emotional, and the path forward is not yet clear. Brie, thank you for being here today, especially with the amazing work you do. Thank you for taking this time.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's start with kind of an easy question before we jump into the hard ones about the very important work that you do. You spent 15 years in corporate marketing before moving into nonprofit leadership. What pushed you to make that shift, and what did you learn in that transition?
That it was hard. I would say that I reached a point in my life where I felt like I had an amazing opportunity to build my expertise, to build a team in the corporate world. But I felt like, and I think a lot of people go through this, I really wanted to work with purpose. I wanted mission-driven work. I wanted something that mattered to me in a way that it wasn't just the work, it was bigger than the work and bigger than me. And so I started looking at different organizations, started thinking about what that would even look like, started looking at what types of projects meant something to me, what fields, and then I found FAR.
I love that you took the time to explore what was meaningful for you and what you actually wanted to do. I think that's a key step that so many of us miss, and something I need to do today, which I will share, is just take that moment to slow down and breathe and then be intentional. And it sounds like one of the reasons, this is my interpretation, one of the reasons you've been so successful in this role is because of the intentionality with which you approached it.
I think so. It was very, it's funny, it was very emotional for me. When I found out I got this job, and I've never had that experience before, where you have an emotional experience to getting a job, it was really emotional for me. So I'm half Armenian. On my mother's side, she had passed away in 2014. It's part of my, identity that I didn't really know that much about, but knew some, but knew it was really important to me. She was a huge advocate in the nonprofit space and helping others. So it almost felt like this moment, this opportunity to honor her. And it was exactly that. It was intentional. And I have to say, I don't think anything before in all the years that I've been working was. Everything else was sort of just, okay, go here. Okay, this worked out or this didn't. But this was something that I felt in my heart I wanted to do.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Okay, you stepped into the top leadership role quickly after joining the organization. What was that moment like, and how did you steady yourself in that transition?
It was scary. I will say that.
I love the honesty. I love it. Okay.
It was. I will be completely honest. And actually, my predecessor, that was the question he asked me. He said, "Are you scared? And are you afraid to take this on?" I think was his words. And I said, "No, I'm not afraid to take it on, but it is scary." And I think those are two important distinctions, or an important distinction, because I felt like I was up for it. And there was something very exciting about that opportunity. But also coming into an organization where it's long established, which is amazing. It's been around for a very long time. There are a lot of cultural differences that you want to really make sure you respect. And there was someone, my predecessor had been there for over 20 years. So it wasn't just, okay, here it was, years of something being firmly established and knowing that you were going to have to find your own path and it was going to take time. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of listening. It was a lot of taking a moment to really understand what was, and not just come barreling in and say, okay, here's how I'm going to do it, or here's what I want to do. Yes, you bring your ideas, but you have to really be cognizant of how things are, how things were, and then how you want them to be.
Okay, Brie, I'm going to take just a minute. You said so many pieces of wisdom there. So the first one that I want to draw out is the difference between being afraid, having fear, and being scared. And something that I think so many people get those two emotions confused, but they're really different, because what I would say is we never want to operate out of fear, right? That's that scarcity mindset. That's when we become desperate. But yet it's okay to be scared. Being scared, I think, is that vulnerable moment of saying, I know this is right for me. I'm just not sure of the right steps. So I'm going to proceed one step at a time. And I love how you so clearly drew that distinction. The other thing that you said that I really, really want to focus in on, and you're probably going to laugh that this is the thing I'm focusing in on, is you said, I had a lot of listening to do. And I have to say, I've probably done 40 interviews by this point of leaders. And I want to say you're one of the few who has talked about the importance of listening, especially during a transition. And you've just lined this up so neatly of you were intentional, you were scared, and you listened, and then you created a path forward. And I think there's just a lot of wisdom to that. And while your journey is very specific, that framework that we just laid out can be applied for anybody in any journey, any path that they're at. And you said that so well, I wanted to pull that out. I hope you don't mind.
No, and thank you. And yeah, I mean, all I know is what I can do ever, right? So some of it comes from experience. Hopefully some of it's intuition. But I agree with you. I think it's a great way, and I hadn't thought about it, to approach life and anything that's set before you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that scare me, but you just got to move forward, right? So this is something that I think, well, I know I can relate to you in a lot. I think we both have a lot of very powerful stories here. When we were speaking earlier, you said that some of your biggest leadership growth came from negative experiences, especially as a female executive. What did those moments teach you, and how did they shape how you lead today?
So yeah, unfortunately they were negative, and they were also in that female, sort of disparaging comment space. And I think for me, being disrespected when you are part of an executive team, or maybe for me, for many, many years, I was the only female in a, boys' room, so to speak,
Yes.
which is fine as long as nobody's playing that card.
Right.
And I think for me, seeing that lack of respect, one of became my biggest roles throughout my career was protecting my team in a way that standing in front of them, and making sure that they're okay and speaking out when they're not. So for me, it's about respect. I don't hire people that I don't trust. I don't hire people that I don't admire. I don't hire people that I don't believe are as capable as I am, or, as bright. And if I did that, it wouldn't make sense to be working with them to begin with. So if you lead from that mentality, then I trust what they have to say. I trust what they think. I trust what they do. And there's no need to ever power play. There's no need to ever treat somebody badly. even if it's, an offhanded remark, even if it's because you're feeling insecure, even if it's because you think it's funny, whatever it may be, there's just no need to be in that
Right.
space.
Right. You said something that reminded me of something that I do and that I teach. And most recently, I taught this in a communication class. I think one of the biggest disadvantages of being human is we don't have a check engine light like our cars, right? When we turn our cars on, we instantly know when something is wrong. And so, what I've taught for years to people I coach, mentor in communication classes, I've taught my daughter this, is to do a full assessment, sometimes multiple times throughout the day. It depends on where you are, right? And identifying your needs, your unmet needs, your trauma, how you feel, and identifying and saying all of those out loud, meeting what you can, and then holding the others carefully. Because then it's like, for me, when I can say to you, Brie, I have not had enough sleep today. I'm a little emotional. So let's talk through this a little bit more slowly so that I can make sure to respond and not react. And I would say that to you because I trust you. I would say that whole sentence because I know you wouldn't use that against me. But you can say that in your mind before you have a conversation. You can say, okay, I need to ask questions very specifically, or I need to be very sure to listen because I'm not going to hear as well today. And you embody that. That's exactly what you do. You do that full assessment. You know where you are, and then you look to see where other people are, and you assess their character and their integrity. And it sounds like you do the best thing. You hire for character and for attitude and for integrity, because we all know we can be taught, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely believe in that.
I love that. Okay. When I learned about your organization, I have to say, this was the single thing that I felt, well, it wasn't the single thing. This was my favorite thing about your organization. You take a holistic approach, and that is so meaningful to me. You look at healthcare, education, economic development, and more. Why is that model, I'm combining my words, excuse me. Why is that model critical when serving vulnerable communities?
Sure. So, this is something that similarly it was so impressive to me about this organization, because I think, and I've seen this now firsthand, a lot of people have really good intentions, right? They want to help other places, but a lot of times that ends up being top down, meaning you have an idea, you come in, here's your solution, and you're not accounting for every facet of, let's say, a community or even a family or even a single person, so maybe you say, oh, I want to help, I want to just do this. And let's say it's in education, but you didn't consider, is there infrastructure for roads to get people to that place? Do they have the healthcare that they need, that they'd be well enough to be able to think of that? Are they protected? Are they safe? Do they feel comfortable enough? And when you think about your own life, and I think you alluded to it earlier, sometimes we have things in our lives that prevent us from taking advantage of other things. And so I think with what FAR does is we cover every facet of life. It doesn't mean that every beneficiary needs it, but we are always looking big picture. And I think that's why it's so successful, is because a lot of what we do, most of what we do is programmatic. So it's ongoing, it's long-term, and it's meant for empowerment, and it's meant to better people's lives long-term. And to do that, you really have to consider everything.
You do. It's almost like you take the approach of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You make sure basic needs are met because you understand that somebody can't move forward and can't stabilize until those basic needs, what is it, food, security, and shelter, are met.
Yeah. And like, for example, one of our most successful programs, we have a lot of them, but this one in particular is combating malnutrition through the kindergartens. So right there, it's a cross sector of education, technically, because it's kindergartens,
right,
and malnutrition, which would technically be healthcare. But the reason why it works so well is because in Armenia, kindergartens are the community epicenter. So kids have 5 meals there. They have breakfast, they have lunch, they have dinner, and they have their snacks. So several years ago, I think it was in 2012, they were able to assess these children in the regions, and unfortunately, they were horribly malnourished. And this was a way to reach them and fill their bodies with the nutrients that they needed through the kindergartens. And so it's just one of those examples of, understanding how a community works and functions, understanding culturally. And these are the experts and the teams at FAR that do this and know this, and are able to think like this and find these types of solutions. And it's an incredibly successful program.
I love it. So if I was to speak in general nonprofit terms, in essence, your team goes into every community, does a full community assessment, identifies the stakeholders and the elders, and then approaches the elders to learn the culture and to gain trust and to see what truly the needs are, and then meets in the middle. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Okay. In 2023, over 100,000 refugees crossed into Armenia. What did your organization have to do immediately to respond?
So this was an incredibly challenging and heartbreaking time. So immediately it was very similar to how FAR was born. So Fund for Armenian Relief started in 1988 in response to the Gyumri earthquake, which was a devastating earthquake in the second biggest city in Armenia. And at the time, it was that same idea of just need. So hygiene relief packets, clothing. The people that fled from Artsakh left with the clothes on their back. That was it. They came with nothing. And everybody from elderly people to children, it was really, really just a horrible time. So first was mobilizing. Mm-hmm. And doing what we started doing. So, and what we always do in times of crisis, which was mobilize for immediate needs. And we did that for a long time. So once we had done that and had mobilized and provided all of sort of the emergency relief, and many other organizations were doing this, we transitioned into what is really our expertise, which is the medium and what we call long-term care, which is trying to identify people. They're doing that similar assessment and figure out, okay, how do we get children back into the schools, or now into the schools in this new place? What kind of psychosocial support do they need? Because they are not going home, and they can't, and they're going to really, and they've been through this, devastating experience. And this was after a 9-month blockade. So they had already been in dire circumstances. And then, who can we help start to rebuild their lives through economic development, support to start a business, education. Another program we have called Continuing Medical Education started focusing on doctors and nurses that came from Artsakh, and they were practicing there, but they're not licensed in Armenia. So how do we train them for free and provide them the support they need so that they can start practicing again? So basically, we took all of the things that we do so well, and all of our directors, we have somebody that runs what we call our pillars. So the healthcare, the economic development, the education, all of these pieces, and started to assess families and individuals, and then start to really focus on the empowerment part and the resilience part, which is getting them to rebuild their lives, or helping them, or giving them the resources to rebuild their lives.
Amazing. I honestly can't imagine having to rebuild from absolutely ground zero. So the strength and courage that your team must witness every day within the people you help is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
So that, I think, is a good segue into this next question. You are leading teams doing emotionally heavy work every day, and probably also experiencing secondary trauma from what they see and they witness. How do you support your staff so they do not burn out while still showing up for the people they serve?
So I think, in Armenia, within the FAR teams, some of the social workers I know had reached a place where they also needed support. And I think that was really important to be able to provide that. Here, it's different. We try to, I think for all the bad, there's also so much hope. So we try, you take those moments and you savor them. And there really is so much, future thinking and hope. And every time, for any beneficiary story that can be really heartbreaking and hard, I know that we're doing that the journey sort of far is at the end of that, or not at the end of that journey, but somewhere along that journey to help them. So I think we focus a lot on that. We also just give ourselves a lot of grace. Sometimes when one person's really tired today or feeling kind of beat down, someone else will say, okay, I've got this for the day, or we laugh a lot. But also just, I think we said in the beginning, we're just human. So I think it's just really being tuned into that, and allowing people to be human in whatever form that takes on any given day is really important.
So it sounds like you've intentionally cultivated a culture of grace, because that's what you said so often is we are human, we have off days, or we are tired. And so the fact that your team has the ability and the freedom to come to each other in grace and say, I'm tired today, can you help? I think that is your legacy right there. I know that probably doesn't sound huge, but bear with me for a minute. Purposely cultivating a culture of grace and allowing your staff to be human means that not only are you protecting them, but you're continually supporting them and setting them up to thrive. And I have to be honest, Brie, I would knock down the door to work with you just to be around somebody with your energy all day like that. I think what you're giving, that's what I'm saying, I think that's your legacy, because most organizations don't have that kind of a culture. They don't have a leader that understands grace. They don't have a leader that understands support and thriving. And from the outside looking in, what I'm hearing from you, and you're not saying this, but you are saying it, if you know what I mean, you are fighting harder and giving your team just as much as they give the refugees. And I think that's the most beautiful thing.
Thank you.
I love that. Okay. I think we both agree on this. I know we spoke on this. People don't always need solutions. They need to be heard. How can leaders build into their teams in a practical way something they could start today where they can hear their team?
So, I think this goes back to sort of what I'm a big believer in. We do a lot of check-ins, and it's a lot of that. It's just, sometimes the calls just kind of meander, but it's just letting people speak. It's not just ticking off this, ticking off that, getting to where we need to be. It's just letting people speak, letting them share, and having the freedom to do that, even if it takes a little bit longer sometimes. I think it's really important. I think it's also just acknowledging what anybody has to share. And, sometimes that can be conflict. Sometimes that can be resolution. Sometimes that can go nowhere. Just be. But I think that those are really important, kind of making the time for that, because you're still getting somewhere. You're always,
Right.
Everybody I work with works so hard. And I think that's another thing. There's no babysitting. The people I work with are incredibly talented people. And they work hard and they push themselves. So, being able to just hear everybody out, hear their opinions, hear their thoughts, hear what's not working, own up to something that, didn't work that I might have been responsible for is another part of that,
Yeah.
It's fine.
I love it. I think as leaders, we often need to say, you know what, I made a mistake. And I think when we do in front of our teams and own it, that vulnerability gives them more than if we, I don't know, gave them a day off. It's like, okay, I have permission to mess up. It's okay.
Yeah.
Bree, I know that you are a nonprofit and you are supporting refugees in Armenia. You are supporting so much more in Armenia. I would say cultural preservation, people, lives, helping people to thrive. What, if people would like to learn more about what you do, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Sure. So our website really tells our story and shares all the different ways that we help, because we help a lot of people that are local in Armenia too. So people that live in the regions, our most vulnerable populations, and then also the refugees. So I would say our website, which is farusa.org, is the best place to learn our story. And there is a page called Get Involved, and there are so many different ways that people can participate. And every dollar counts. Sounds cliche, but it's true.
Oh, it's true.
And there's so many ways for people to help the people in Armenia.
I love it. I love it. So I think what we can see here through Bree, who's just such a beautiful person. I have to say, she started this call off with a laugh and she's given me so much grace. It's been absolutely wonderful. I think we can see leadership it's not tested when things are easy. It's tested when that path is unclear. The work is heavy and people are counting on you. And I would say Bree is a person I would turn to in crisis any day. So I understand her team's commitment. This conversation shows that strong leadership is not about having the answers. It's about staying grounded, listening well, and moving forward one step at a time. If you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. You do not have to solve everything today. Focus on the next step. Support your team. Listen more than you speak. This is how real progress happens. Thank you so much for joining us, Bree. Thank you so much. Thank you for the gifts you gave me, and thank you for what you shared with the staff. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay, bye.